Community live stream number 123. Not only that, but today is a very special day. I don't wear a costume just any day, and I certainly don't wear eye makeup for very good reasons. Most of what I'm wearing right now does belong to my wife. I don't normally wear her clothes, but when I do, I make sure they're fashionable. It's very good to be here. There is a reason why we are dressed up, though. And as I was talking to Roey earlier, I am, as he said, Data Garcia, and I am playing for the Stateful Dead. That being said, I will be putting on my sunglasses so you don't have to see my incredible eye makeup. But the reason why we're dressed up today is that all these three wonderful humans are joining us today from Israel. And in Israel, it's a very special holiday, which in American pronunciation would be Purim. In Hebrew, I think it would be something closer to Purim, and I might be totally wrong on that too.
Not at all.
It's a very special day where you get to dress up, from what I understand.
Yeah, like our Halloween.
Yeah, it's like your Halloween. But it's cool because like it's an underground Halloween because not as many people know about it. So I feel even cooler dressing up for today.
Yeah, but here it feels like everybody knows about it.
That's true. That's true.
You have people with swords and stuff. And you're like,
yeah. Here in the north of Spain, I think I might be the only person who's dressed up right now. Well, man, there's got to be somebody out there, but still. Anyway, very nice to be here with all of you today. You are all from Statehub, which is one of the members of the Data on Kubernetes community. Massive shout out to Statehub. Very active in our ecosystem. They're doing great stuff. Can we just go around and do a little quick round of introductions? We'll start with you, Michael, since you're wearing a different costume. Can you introduce yourself and tell us about your role in Statehub?
Yeah, well, I'm the head of product, which is very interesting, I presume. I do product stuff like Jira tickets and design documents and yeah. Pretty much with Statehub since the beginning through various iterations and excited to be here.
Very, very good. Good to have you. And sounds like a very active job. Now moving over to you, Roey. What's up?
Yeah, cool. So I'm Roey. I had the
once again, this pronunciation game is vicious.
Yeah, it's okay. Like half of my Americans friends have been calling me Roy my entire life, and like can't fix that. So I had the marketing department for Statehub and whatever development doesn't do. And that's about it. Like we've been out for like 6 months now, and it's been a journey. It's been a lot of fun since we came up. And yeah, really happy to be here and to be in the DoK Foundation.
Awesome. Good to have you with us. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Jenkins.
So I joined, next month it will be my 3rd anniversary at Statehub. I joined them as the DevOps lead, but now as a DevOps who does everything. I do solution architecture as well. So I'm here. Happy to be here.
A man of many hats, although he's not wearing one. Now, today we're going to be talking, today we're, and with a very flashy bow tie. I must admit that I made a massive mistake. He had already informed me last week that he'd be dressed up as Jenkins. I humbly mistook him for Pee Wee Herman. I apologize for the confusion. That's okay.
I love the Pee Wee Herman much better. Like we're gonna go with that, like internally in the company.
So now you've got another hat that you can wear, which is the Pee Wee Herman one. That being said, declarative data is something that came up. There is actually something we're going to talk about today, apart from just costumes and holidays. Is that declarative data is a very important topic that arose in our research report that we did last year, where we interviewed 500 different organizations about how they see the challenge and opportunities of running data on Kubernetes. So this is what we're going to be focused on today. Get your questions out there. If there are terms that you're not familiar with, please feel free to ask. That being said, I'd like to turn it over to the three of you. Michael, if you'd like to share your screen, we can jump into the presentation. Remember, folks, take advantage. You can get your questions out here on YouTube, also in our Slack. All three of these wonderful people will be available to answer them. So that being said, Michael, you can take it away.
Sure. You know what? Let me start a little bit with like a bit of like an intro, because like basically like we're not planning of showing like big demos or big thing, and just to talk a little bit about the challenges that are facing the industry basically and how we see that. We didn't start our story with Kubernetes. We actually started it with VMs and replication and stuff of the sort, and we saw like such a burning need in Kubernetes that we shifted towards it. And in Kubernetes, we found out a lot of different challenges and the complexity of the matter and the different issues between if it's from compatibility to skill sets and whatever. And like we wanted to talk a little bit about what we see in the industry and how it also fits with the DoK survey and how we see ourselves fit with that. So basically, like, you know, I would have asked like the first question would be like, why isn't stateful Kubernetes as adopted as stateless in general? Like, what are the challenges facing it? And Michael, our head of product, has been researching this topic for, well, most of his life now. So Michael is the only storage person under 40, which this is why he doesn't need a costume, because it's that surreal.
Okay. The under 40 club, which is a very lonely club to be in, but you are unique. That's good.
Yeah. So Michael, what do you think?
The smile is a costume. It's not real. There's a lot of pain inside. Yeah. So yeah. Everybody hates storage, right? Dealing with it, setting it up, configuring it, especially for replication, for stuff like data protection, high availability, backups, all that. Now, Kubernetes has kind of came out with this amazing approach of, you know, let's have a declarative configuration, describe what you want your IT environment to look like, and it will be made to fit your description, right? There will be mechanisms that reconcile between what's actually happening and what you need to have. Now, this all works pretty well with stateless applications. You have your, you know, you just specify your container image, how much, how many of it you need, maybe some constraints, you know, about like, I want it on these nodes, not on that, on the other nodes, but all pretty much very generic stuff that don't change much from environment to environment, from cloud vendor to cloud vendor, from on-prem to the public cloud, and so on and so forth. When it comes to data, it all kind of falls apart, because then you need to specify, you know, specific storage classes that are vendor specific. They have different properties in terms of availability and the other thing. I thought, yeah, I thought it would be a good idea to prepare, but then I thought I'll just wing it. So in terms of availability and performance and all that stuff. So what happened is that if you have an application that's ready to be run on, like, you know, on-prem or on a public cloud in a specific region or a specific cloud vendor, you cannot easily take it somewhere else. You will be stuck with porting your configuration from one cloud vendor to another cloud vendor. So there's no interoperability, there's no portability of applications. All of that cloud native awesomeness just falls apart as soon as you need to deal with the data, because you don't end up actually dealing with the data. You end up dealing with storage, right? You like, I just want 10 gigs from a database. Yeah, but where do you want it from? From a GP2 or a GP3 or at the moment you make this choice once, you kind of weld your application to a specific physical location where it will be forever, because now you cannot move. Like, you know, you move to another region or to another cloud, you get a completely different new data set. Oh, new hat. That's my cue to
Roey,
stop
just
talking.
switched hats. I'd like everyone to know that. If you're listening to this later in the future as a podcast, one of the panelists just switched hats.
This is my thinking hat. Yeah, I think like what Michael is like saying, like just to summarize it, I think there's a reason why we're in the data on Kubernetes community and not the storage on Kubernetes community, because we consume data. We don't consume storage. Storage is a physical device that is restricted to whoever sells you that physical device. And also because if we were
and on that point, Kubernetes, what it does is not only that it abstracts the physical layer, right? That already you probably get some VMs that to run on from the cloud. It also abstracts the cloud vendor that you're working with. So you can have cloud native and portable applications. And the moment data comes into play, it all goes out the window.
Exactly. What do you think, Ulrich? Is it possible even?
That's exactly the reason why I always wanted to work with Kubernetes. I think me and a lot of my other DevOps engineers, we see, at least me, I see Kubernetes as an abstraction layer above infrastructure, above cloud providers. So after I take this huge project of deploying my application on Kubernetes, right? Which no matter how complex it is, could take weeks, could take months. After I do that, if I want to scale somewhere else, if I have Kubernetes over there, that's fine. That's all I need. But if let's say a new engineer comes along, all I need him to know is Kubernetes. If he knows Kubernetes, I feel fine with him administrating pod services, whatever. He can deal and know how to debug my application in this infrastructure. But it's not the case with stateful workloads yet. I think I know like different providers have different storage solutions with different features, different limitations. Across some are available across AZ, some not. So and there aren't a lot of services that abstract away the storage layer. So you can either choose what the cloud offering is offering you right now, which is take the easy path right now and the hardest later, or you can do a DIY solution, which is hardest now and will be hard in the future. So I guess we know what you would choose to do, and which is a huge project, right? Like most DevOps teams or engineering teams don't have the kind of knowledge and that is required for this kind of project. Networking, storage, replication, infrastructure, which is really tucked away behind the curtain, which the cloud provider doesn't even want you to see, right? So I think that's the biggest issue here.
Exactly. Yeah, but like we see that like all the time when we talk to like these type of like born to cloud DevOps team. Like they were trained as DevOps in AWS or got all kinds of certification from them or from Azure or from Google, and they learned like they drink the Kool-Aid of just the cloud provider. So it gives them a tool that tools that are restricted to a certain infrastructure. When they want to move from that infrastructure or they need a certain operational flexibility, they find themselves stuck. And it's either they can consume managed services that also kind of restrict them, or they can go with a kind of like a DIY approach, and really it requires a lot of knowledge about storage and things like that that we just don't think that people should have anymore. Like these are issues that were solved in many different ways. And
yeah, the whole idea behind cloud is letting someone else solve these issues for you, right? Like, yeah. You don't need infrastructure engineers and experts in your organization because they are in the cloud, right? They work at those companies that automate these things away. So these people like are being automated away, but so they're non-existent.
Yeah, so it makes like the the difference between the stateless and stateful experiences is so big that we find that some don't even try the stateful experience. The second there is some complexity into their stack, the second that there is another cluster or another region or everything, it just becomes a little bit too complex. It's also something that we saw in the DoK survey. Standardization and complexity that derives from it are some of the biggest key points that people show that are stopping Kubernetes from adopting stateful workloads. And basically the real question is, can stateful deployments even come remotely close to the same user experience as their stateless counterpart when it comes to agility, when it comes to ease of use? So Michael here researched a lot of products and stuff like that. Michael, what do you think? Is it possible?
Well, it is not impossible. Here's the thing. There is a gap in the industry, which, spoiler alert, we're trying to fill, regarding standardization, regarding the ability to easily provision and move around stateful workloads by not dealing with anything storage related or network related, right? Because when you try to have some kind of persistent workload that needs to be resilient beyond the confines of your availability zone, you start running into issues. You start running into you have a data problem, but you start dealing with networking issues. How do you replicate the data? How do you make sure that all of your locations are in sync in case you want to move your application around, in case you really want it to be portable and cloud native and not stuck in one place. While we can't expect the solution to come from the cloud vendors themselves, Bart, I hope you're okay. You went dark there. While you can't, so the solution won't come probably from the cloud vendors themselves, because they don't want to allow too much interoperability, too much freedom of movement of data. The industry will close that gap, and we're here to do probably just that.
Can we double down on that a little bit more? Because regarding interoperability, portability, and the buzzword cloud native bingo, if you want to win, vendor lock-in, like hearing from major cloud providers, I'm not going to name names, that they're fighting against vendor lock-in, that they're totally okay with this. But when push actually comes to shove and you look at it, and also from a certain form of logic, that they want to keep everything under the same roof, push people into their own solutions, say we're cool with Kubernetes, but you can also use our managed container services. How do you get beyond that? What needs to happen for them to either really wake up or for new alternatives to arise?
That's
if you ask me, we actually discussed that, but I think the first step is market education a little bit. There is an issue with the consumption of managed services. We take solutions that solve our current problem, and we never think about any operational flexibility afterwards. So if I have a problem of replicating a database, so maybe I'll use a managed solution that's only applicable to that database and comes with certain capabilities, but also it comes with certain restrictions. Or sometimes cloud providers, most of their services, like we see with from RDS to manage SQL and stuff like that, are restricted to their own infrastructure. One of the reasons why, if you ask me, is very simple. we are to blame. We do not look at vendor neutrality as a feature. We don't think about it in our decision-making process. So when I choose a solution, my goal is to solve a problem. And I don't have to think ahead of that. If we start looking, and when we talk to people from the public cloud or any other event and ask them, okay, but can I run this in Azure as well? Can I move that to Google? If the public will be more aware as a community that these features matter, and keeping operational flexibility is to your best interest, I think that will change a lot. Because
I'll quote a customer who said, everything I learned in my career, that everything that can break will break, and everything that can't break will break. So you can't take anyone's words on anything, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, and regarding market education, I don't know if that's the correct term here, but it used to be the case, specifically before Kubernetes, that in order to run a database, you need to, like on the cloud, right? You needed to get an instance or a VM with some operating system that you're comfortable with, and patch it to patch out all the security vulnerabilities, and then you would need to install the database like binaries, the software packages themselves, and then you would need to connect the storage and then configure your fstab file so that they will mount on boot, and then it will FSCK correctly when something happens, and do all that system administration stuff. Any system administrators in the cloud, in the crowd? I mean, probably not anymore. So it would be like a task of a day to set up a database, and AWS and the rest of the hyperscalers, and not only them, like even the smaller cloud vendors. Of course, there's also Oracle, right? Came up with, okay, there's RDS, there's Azure SQL, there's click and you have a database. Now, what we have with Kubernetes is pretty much the same experience right now, because you have so many.
You have operators.
Exactly. You have operators that completely obviate the need to lock yourself into a proprietary service by cloud vendor, but we kind of still use them by inertia, right? Because we're under the illusion that it's somebody else's problem, but the problem becomes mine when it doesn't work, because everything, we had 3, 4, 7 AWS outages in the last month. I don't know. I kind of lost count already. And the other guys aren't much better, right? Look, or worse, they're amazing. They're amazing services, right? But they have one flaw, that they all have people in them that make mistakes and things break, right? So what I'm saying is, these proprietary services, you click and you get a connection string. Okay, you can get this with Kubernetes. You are managing your own Kubernetes anyway right now, right? So what's the difference? Barely any. But what do you gain? Potentially, you gain, if you use the correct tools on the infrastructure level and abstract the data layer as well, you get the ability not to be bound to your vendor, to a specific geographic location. 2 people in the garage start a company, 7 years later, and they're like, okay, let's go to AWS US East 1 because everybody does it. And 7 years later, it's a 5,000 people corporation, and they're still there and they can't move, even though their business might demand something else. They have so much data, and that's the thing that's keeping them locked in.
Yeah. I think relying on specific features or a thing that's automated away, like behind the curtain, as I said, which is like provided to you by a single vendor. It's like it automatically gets you more attached to it, and which is obviously in the vendor's best interest, right? But which is okay. I'm not saying they're doing it deliberately, but obviously they will always choose to develop their own business instead of developing this thing that might take their customers away. It's probably not in their highest priority. So we as consumers, we need to make smart consumer decisions. We need to choose tools that will allow us flexibility. Like a minimalist who travels, like you need to pack light. You need to pack multi-purpose tools. So whenever you need anything, you have it, but you still can move around freely. So we need to keep portability and vendor neutrality in mind. Like whenever I deploy a load balancer on top of a Kubernetes cluster, I'll always prefer using the Nginx solution on top as opposed to using a cloud load balancer controller. Because if I take this configuration and apply it anywhere else, it will just work, as opposed to something that I'll have to just rebuild and have figure out how to do it again on top of another infrastructure. So I think we need to keep vendor neutrality in mind. Keep our workloads as neutral as possible, so we can always deploy it somewhere else.
Go ahead, Roey.
No, I'm completely agreeing with him. That there's definitely is one of the things that we see the most is companies finding themselves having what you want is someone that deals with Kubernetes, that develop the Kubernetes, Devops engineers for Kubernetes, and what they find after a while, if they really want to enjoy the full benefits of the public cloud, that they have an AWS engineer and an Azure engineer and these skill sets that are not really fungible across infrastructure. So making a day zero decision and saying, okay, in our decision-making process, we think ahead. And it is definitely going to serve you when it comes to day two operation and stuff of the like. It's basically the reason why we created Statehub as something that as a type of a standard for storage that you can access wherever you want, however you want, and does not require from you to learn all of these terrible things that Michael and Uli told us, like storage and networking and replication policies and all kinds of things like that. And I'll let Michael introduce what we do, which is basically simplify everything. And take it away, Michael.
Yeah, I won't bore you with too many slides. Actually, just two to drive a certain point home that there's currently no convenient way to declare data. What you do, you declare storage, right? Persistent volume claim makes you the persistent volume claim mechanism is great, but it makes you declare to your containers what kind of storage they will use and where that storage will be. So if you're on AWS, you would choose to use a GP2 or a GP3. On Azure, they have their own storage classes that bind to actual different storage products within the Azure ecosystem. The same goes with Google Cloud and so on. So first of all, the problem is with the portability of the configuration. The declarability kind of goes away, right? Because you no longer have something that describes your application. It describes what kind of binary I want to run and where is the volume that that I want to use it with, because underneath the persistent volume claim, there's the persistent volume that is an actual volume ID, like almost a LUN number that goes to a specific disk somewhere. Now, what happens if you want to move your application even to a different availability zone, not to mention another region or another cloud? You deploy the same configuration, and even though it's consistent with the vendor that you're using, you're going to get a blank disk. So it's not going to be your application. It's going to be like, it's going to be your application with amnesia. It's going to be your business with amnesia. It's going to be a clean slate, right? Not to mention, when you want to move to another cloud altogether, none of this will work. So we at Statehub came up with a way of using the persistent volume claim mechanism to allow you to reference your data and not specifically the physical volume and by extension its physical location in the world. So when you use your when you run your applications and they are using Statehub storage, when they claim volumes through our storage classes, right? Through that actually, like you see, it's a fully qualified kind of domain name scheme in which you have the name of your organization, of your company, and the name of your application or application stack, and the name of the volume. This definition will point your application to the same data on any cluster anywhere in the world, no matter on which region, AZ, or cloud vendor it is. Now, of course, the concerns are what happens to the application, the data access latency, right? So what we did is we built in multi-region, multi-cloud, multi-AZ replication, which happens in real time. It's not synchronous across large distances, but it's effectively synchronous. And I won't go into details here, but you are more than welcome to ask me questions if you want to know how it all works. But the idea is that when you want your application to run somewhere else, you would register your cluster with Statehub, saying, I have another cluster somewhere else in the world, in a different cloud, and we will make sure that the data is there waiting for you to the moment when you would want to run your application there. And when you will run your application there, if you want to move it from somewhere else, the data will be already there waiting for your application when it comes up. So this is how we kind of get the data close to where your application needs to run. There's this whole, let's call it a premise or concept of data locality, which is like, you have those vendors and solutions that allow you to understand where your data is and move your container or your application close to your data and run it there. But that might be not where you need your application to run from a business perspective, right? So we kind of obviating this approach and doing the opposite. We're bringing the data over to where your application is. And by doing it as a service, you don't even need to take care of the underlying networking or to connect your clusters within the same network. It all goes like when you consume Statehub storage, it just automatically is almost magically replicated between all of the locations where you might need your data later on. So you are just able to deploy your application just by applying your YAML files, Helm charts, what have you, with the same persistent volume claim configuration letter for letter, verbatim. It's going to be the same, and it's going to refer to the same data no matter where your application is running on which Kubernetes cluster, on which region, on which cloud vendor.
And just to add to that, like the level of experience is so simple that even I, as someone that the closest thing I got to replication is copy and paste in Word, was able to replicate an entire cluster from one region to the world to another, to a different infrastructure, and how much, like 4 or 5 different databases that are connected to it that work completely in sync. The reason why I can do it is because the only thing I needed to do is basically register the other cluster to Statehub, and the replication just started. It just recognized it, created the networking, created everything for us. So even the marketing guy can just run with it and do it in a second. There's no need for any like dedicated knowledge, like, all of this information that Uri and Michael have lost a lot of hair and hope on. Learning how storage works in different areas and in different things. Just checking your self-confidence. So all of these things are not really needed. Like what Statehub does is it just turns the data into something declarative. The second you apply a single line of code, which is Statehub register cluster in another region, you've created all of this infrastructure that would have also cost you a lot, but besides that, it's just not something that you should do. You should focus on developing application, not infrastructure.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a question. Since we're talking about, simplicity, and as someone who can't even copy and paste on Word, I can empathize with the previous statement and position. But thinking about that from a simplification perspective, something that I hear with a certain degree of frequency is about how, Kubernetes needs to become more boring, easier to use, et cetera, et cetera. When we're talking about simplicity, obviously we're talking about the ability to save time. From a data stakeholder's perspective, what do you think are the things that data practitioners, DevOps, DBREs, et cetera, should be focusing their attention on and perhaps are wasting their time on with these things that are being simplified by the work that you're doing?
You want to take that, Michael? Or?
Thinking inside the day inside a day 2 context, for example.
Well, like
you're asking what else does working with a service like ours saves you time on?
Yeah, so by saving you time on certain things, enabling you to focus on things that should be a bigger priority or should be deserving more attention.
First of all, let's make one thing clear. Like everybody knows this. I think everybody, at least who works in this industry, knows that we are understaffed. No matter where you work, you're probably in need for another DevOps engineer or two.
By the way, are you hiring? Are you hiring for Jenkins experts?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Okay. Always. So
everyone is hiring.
Everyone is hiring. Everyone is hiring DevOps engineers. Seriously, it's a big pain in this industry. A lot of startups have been popping up because of money being printed in COVID, and a lot of startup means a lot of people need to scale their applications, meaning a lot of CPOs dealing with DevOps instead of just building their applications. So first of all, you have that, and then everybody wants. So let's say everybody has when you have customers and you're making money for each customer that is going into your platform, you make money from your customers using it, right? So you need it to be available. I know a lot of companies that have DR as a task, but this task is too big and it's not agile enough and it doesn't fit any sprint, because we currently work as startups. A lot of startups we work, and not even big companies, enterprise companies who just adopted the same methodology are doing agile, right? And then you try to make small tasks every time. You trying to fit in the smallest task possible into sprints. and you have this DR task, which is at least 2 weeks long. So it doesn't fit any sprint. It's huge. It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
So it always gets postponed. Even if you start small, you start, okay, I only create a DR for my Jenkins, right? I'll only do that. That takes a few days. So, okay, you put that aside. You do that, you complete Jenkins, and you take everything aside. You continue developing more important stuff, new features, because everybody needs new features all the time, because if not, you're not competitive enough in your market. So you postpone that, and then you find yourself downtime after another, asking yourself, how come I don't have a DR yet? Why do I have all this automation that can deploy everything I have in any region I want, but I still can't bring my application up there? Which this is the reason I joined Statehub at the beginning, because I had this happen to me. I had this region down, I had all the automation ready, but I didn't have data on the other side to bring it all up. So this is a huge thing, DR. It's a huge project that you basically wouldn't have to think of, not in day one, not in day two. So you wouldn't have to maintain replication, you wouldn't have to maintain network infrastructure or storage infrastructure, you just have it. So that's the biggest thing, biggest thing. Plus, just redeploying Prometheus server on an existing cluster, same cluster. Let's say you want to, I don't know, for some reason you changed the Helm chart, or you did something, you changed from one version of a Helm chart to another, and
he was hacked by the phone call.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one hell of a phone call. You know what? I'm just gonna.
I'm gonna give.
You know what? I expect that from Jenkins. It's okay. If I can like summarize this just a little bit. So I think that like we see with a lot of our clients is that we actually take care of a lot of day two operations in day one. Mm-hmm. So basically, all of these things that Roey was talking about, from replication, portability, copy management, fire drills, disaster recovery,
all the nice to haves that are actually crucial to your business.
Yeah, all of those things that you tell your boss says, yeah, we'll do that eventually, nothing's never going to happen or something like that. You can take care of them in day one and still remain with, basically increase your portability and your flexibility. So
got disconnected there, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
We forgive you. It's okay.
It's okay. We blame Jenkins. Anyway, so so I was just summarizing a little bit and showing them that little slide that we did with the day two and day one. Mm-hmm. Like Roey said, like making the right decisions like at day zero and implementing them in day one. If those decisions include a lot of the day two operation, it saves you a lot of tasks. So just think that all of these tasks that you see at day one that we just shifted left are all perpetual things that are going to take time from your team on a daily basis or weekly basis or monthly basis. But this is wasted time that you could have developed features and things that will bring you customers or can improve the experience of your existing customers.
As a DevOps engineer,
I have another suggestion for Bart. Instead of spending a month making your database resilient across two clouds or two regions, just do it in 2, 3, 5 minutes with Statehub, and go home early, be with your kids or your family, or live life a little. And don't mess with storage and networks and all that crap, because work you'll never have less of it. The more efficient you are, the more work you have. So
I respect that. Sorry, Uri, you were going to say something?
I was going to say that even if you automate that part away, you'll probably, as a DevOps, which are understaffed, you'll probably have other tasks to deal with, like bringing more automation into your internal platform and have your developers ship features faster or fix bugs faster. So there's a ton to do.
Also, people
knock off some Jira tickets from the backlog, increase your velocity, get a raise.
And also, basic IT practices, like you can try application on a few different clouds. Maybe today it works really well on this cloud, and tomorrow you'll use a different cloud. Like the Kubernetes gave us this promise that we'll be able to have reversible decisions, and we'll be able to have like self-healing things and all of these amazing things that kind of like storage took away a little bit. But if we stop looking at storage and start looking at it as data, and we start saying like, I want this data to be served to the application, I don't want to create the connection between the data center and the application and ensure that like everything is in place. I just want to wish upon data and let it appear. And that's the experience that Stata wants to give, an experience that to deal with data, you don't have to know storage or networking or all of the other things that Michael mentioned.
I guess with that, if I can just ask a question, there's we're talking about simplification, simplifying things, and obviously being in a smaller company, many of you are going to be customer facing, having direct contact with customers. It's something in bigger firms, perhaps some folks don't necessarily have. When it comes to explain these things, and in terms of how much detail you have to get into, something that we noticed from the research report is that perhaps some organizations are running stateful workloads on Kubernetes and aren't even aware of it. How do you go about educating the customer in what they really need to know about and what's really going to add value in their case?
So a funny thing is, like, we were in KubeCon this year, and like the previous KubeCon, and in the beginning, when we explained, it was our first big event, and in the beginning of the event, we explained people, we're like, yeah, we're creating storage, we're creating this, and then Michael started coming to people and telling them, your data is here. If you write this code here, it will appear here. And they went like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. So you're right. People want things to be simple, and people want things to just work. It's one of the reasons why we made it as a service, but it's still a pay-as-you-go and everything alike. But we made it as a service, so you'll be able to consume it as a service and not think about all of that. So I completely agree. People don't want to go into complicated DIY solution or learn complicated things. They want to have simplicity. And basically, when I show someone how I replicate a cluster, and I'll tell them that I have zero experience in the matter, that's basically what they want to see. They want to see something that has been simplified to a way that you don't even think about it. In the same way that I have no idea where Dropbox is holding the data that I put in it. I don't care. It's available and protected, and that's what's important.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Dropbox is actually a pretty good analogy in terms of the declarativity, right? You don't go and mount some network folder with an IP address and a long path, with a tilde in your username /home/users. Like, if like, I guess maybe 10% of the people understand what I'm talking about, but like the way things used to be, that you needed to actually point to the physical location of your data volume on the network in order to access it. What you do with Dropbox is you're like, hey, Dropbox, that's me. Where's my stuff? And it just appears. And you save a file there. You go to any other computer anywhere in the world, and your data is there as long as Dropbox knows it's you. This is the storage experience we've created for Kubernetes. Just as you declare what is the name of the container image you want to run, you also declare what is the name of the data like container that goes with it, and it goes with you wherever you take this configuration.
Exactly.
Now, we are getting towards the end. There is one point that I always try to touch on with all of our speakers, some of which have been mentioned at different points throughout the conversation, is that, and we kind of actually touched on this at the beginning. One thing is about, what is running data on Kubernetes? Another thing is how to do it. But a bigger question, once again, customer facing, is why, all right? And so we've kind of identified some different whys in that. But if you had to choose the most important reason as to why you think organizations should be taking this more seriously, whether there needs to be a stronger push for standardization and sharing practices, precisely what we do here in our community, what would be that core reason? And we'll start with Mr. Jenkins.
Okay, so I think probably like there's a spectrum, right? You could do everything managed, you can run everything in managed services, and you could do everything yourself. I don't believe extremes are the best way to go in anything, basically. I think you should take the more balanced, and you need to do it as less as possible. So like the managed part, but you need to keep as much flexibility as possible, right? So I think the sweet point there is running things on Kubernetes with operators and solutions that are just deployed, like developed by someone else, but are deployed in your cluster with a Helm installer or something like that, and are still in your control. So I think that's the number one reason, at least for me.
Okay, anything to add, Michael?
Yeah, so it's kind of a chicken and egg kind of thing. But when we talk about what we offer, a lot of customers go straight to the business continuity disaster recovery features, right? Because I'm able to get my application running somewhere else with all of its data up until the last transaction before the failure. That's a thing, right? Obviously. And there's like a bunch of other reasons with, I have a different cloud which is now cheaper. Why won't I move my workloads there if I can get cheaper spot instances? I can't because I don't have my data there. Well, now you can have your data there. So it all boils down to application mobility as a core ability for you to run your business effectively, minimize downtime, be more efficient with funds, protect your data assets and your brand. So I love saying application mobility because it kind of, well, the problem is it both means a lot of things to me and nothing to most people. So here we are getting the message out.
Last but not least, Mr. Roey, with your third hat.
Well, I think it's very simple because we should run that on Kubernetes just because we like Kubernetes and we don't want to maintain different flows for data-rich application and for stateless application. We want to run everything through a single orchestration layer that we're able to move and create and enjoy all these benefits that we adopted Kubernetes for. So the data is just a missing part. It shouldn't hold us back. We should ask ourselves what we can do to actually improve it. There's a lot of benefit to running stateful workloads on Kubernetes, but if you ask me, the biggest one is you just want everything to be containerized in a way that you have a single skill set, engineers that can support your entire stack and everything. and basically unify workflow. It will help release things for CI/CDs better and everything. Kubernetes has been a proven technology. It was adopted when it comes to stateless, and it was created for stateless, basically. Now that we have all of these tools like Statehub and a lot of also other tools that help us simplify stateful workloads, we should run it just because it's more convenient, and we don't want to have different types of skill set and technologies in our stack just because one of our technologies is missing a part.
Very, very good. Nice balance between the three answers. And it's good. And the thing is, once again, in an area where standardization is still being established, where things are quite innovative, some of these answers will have overlaps, new ones will be developed. That's what makes this exciting. We did get a question from someone in the audience. Can we create a project like Dropbox with Kubernetes, as Michael shared the point?
Well, we can create something that is as resilient as Dropbox. The way that Statehub currently works is that it provides block devices like persistent volumes to different applications running on specific clusters. But in order to access it from different locations, you need to actually move the application around. So you cannot have multiple instances of the same application replicating data both ways, because disks don't work this way. However, having said that, we are gearing up to release an object storage component, S3 compatible, but again, multi-region, multi-cloud, that will allow you to create a sort of Dropbox alternative that is geared towards the end of the year. So you will be able to do that. Just point your application to a bucket that would appear locally, but in multiple places. And the data will be replicated in real time between all of the locations. So right now, we're a solution for persistent volumes as in disk, and object is coming soon. That would allow you multiple write locations from multiple applications on multiple clusters in multiple regions, multiple clouds.
Got it. So we can anticipate Statebox, or maybe it doesn't have a name yet, by KubeCon. I'll send you the invoice for that. We can anticipate that by next KubeCon, the one in October in Detroit, perhaps.
Perhaps. Okay. Yeah.
I don't want to get anybody in trouble. Product, like the launch is going to be in November. No, that's okay.
No, listen, I have an ever-growing list of features, and as Uri said, everyone is always understaffed, so we're hiring in order to get these features out.
Yeah, the second you break the borders and make data availability is something as a commodity, there are no limits. Like if you can make data available anywhere, like application like Dropbox, a thing like that are an option, but mobile Salesforce that require like a certain performance and consistency from remote servers that they don't always use. Follow the sun scenario where you have multiple data locations around the world that need to change between primary and secondary without losing their sync data. All of these things are available. It's and we hope that just like the Dropbox question, we hope that our users will adopt us and will be able to create all kinds of things like that. It's why we actually created like a free trial that doesn't require any credit cards or whatever, and we give you 100 free gigs, which is more than what Dropbox is giving. And with that, you can do whatever you want. And we actually would love to hear and to help and support different projects. Like just for example, one of our customers, we were able to replicate an entire GitLab cluster. It's a hell of a project to replicate a GitLab cluster, and the level of complexity is insane. because we go from the disk level, not from the application layer, for us, it wasn't that difficult. It was just creating 5 volumes from one side and replicating them to another. So we're really excited about with the things that people find out about us. It's a hell of a marketing challenge for me because there's so many different use cases. So it's very hard to focus. But so far, you know, from small MSP that 4 people are taking like a kind of like a David and Goliath story, are able to take really big customers because they don't need to worry about the infrastructure task, or small companies that were planning of taking very expensive managed services and were able to solve their solution with something that charges them by the gigabyte and not by, you know, hours and consumption and all of these extremely complicated things. Like, you know, we have a lot of engineers here, but to understand a cloud bill is beyond us.
Yeah. Imagine having a complex application, as Roey just mentioned, like GitLab, with more than one type of database. You need the ability and the know-how in your organization. How do you create replication for each one of those? Or you can just skip the whole thing and say, I want to have a replicated storage, so that when I want to, like, if one site crashes, it would be as if I unplug a thumb drive with the volumes for all of my 5 different databases, plug it in somewhere else, and resume my operation, and it will take like 10 seconds, 15 seconds. This saves a lot of, like, how many of you DBA people came to work in the morning just to see that the MySQL replication broke during the night because of a primary key violation? This stuff happens all the time, and it's so frustrating not having to even set it up in the first place, because your infrastructure takes care of the copy management and resilience, and like in real time, continuously replicating all of your data somewhere else without the clusters knowing that they're being replicated, without the application knowing it's being replicated. It's going to save you so much headache.
Yeah, look, like I see a future where we don't even know which cloud provider we're basically using. We're just looking at geo availability.
That's the dream.
That's the dream.
That was my nightmare, and this is my dream.
Exactly, and we really hope, like, you know, we're very excited about the things that we see in the DoK community, because, like, you know, sometimes you feel a little bit crazy where, like, nobody's noticing these big issues. Why aren't there enough solution? But we're definitely excited about the DoK community, because we see not just the need, but a community that really want to solve something. Like,
and you can dress up.
And you can dress up. Yeah, you can dress up.
We don't even use Jenkins. We use Concourse.
Yeah.
All right.
But it doesn't matter. It's because it's still cool. No, I think these are all good points. That's a very nice point to finish on. That collectively seeing so many people from different countries, but, you know, we're getting together to tackle these problems that we identified in the research report, and really benefiting from the know-how that each one can share. That being said, another tradition that makes us different here in this community is that while we've been talking, we have our amazing artist who's behind the scenes. So I'm just going to share what he came up with. Kind of getting in the spirit of St. Patrick's Day, which is tomorrow. I don't know if there is a Purim color, but maybe it's green, maybe it isn't. But anyway, we got a nice sort of mishmash of the different topics that were discussed. Obviously, quite a few were mentioned. And if you arrive late, of course, you can find the recording on YouTube very, very soon. This is an absolute pleasure. Statehub is a very cool place for the technology that they're doing, but obviously you can see from the quality of the human beings who work there, they are hiring. Are you hiring mostly in Israel or abroad, anywhere, remote? What's the deal?
Well, outside of Russia, I think we're going to hire anyone.
That's the new.
Yeah, I think that's the new standard, I think. Oh, and Belarus.
Okay. Yeah. So for the time being, excluding those 2 places.
For the time being, yeah.
You're flexible.
The DevOps engineer will probably hire anyone.
Yeah.
That's how you got your job, right, Odie? You'll hire anyone.
Don't tell anyone.
I won't tell you. Your secret's safe with me. Gentlemen, this is a fantastic conversation. The first time that we actually had you on a live stream, and certainly not the last. Really enjoyed it. Brought a lot of freshness to this, and very, very solid beliefs, and giving us a firmer understanding of where we're at, as well as with Roey's dream about where we're going, where we're headed. I like that. So that's a good way to finish too. Thank you all very much. We'll see you all soon.
A little reminder, we have another webinar on the 23rd that Bart is joining, and we're gonna be joined with our friends from Platform 9. They also do a lot of work, and we work with them intensively of solving all kinds of data issues for their clients. And we're also going to talk about declarative data and how it can be done in like a managed Kubernetes kind of environment, how AKS, EKS, PKS, whatever S you want can connect together. So
connect all the S's.
My only question, am I allowed to dress up for that too? Or that will be
you
a very
are
serious
always allowed to dress.
Okay, but be careful what you wish for. I may come dressed as Jenkins. You never know. I gotta get a bow tie first. No, I'm looking
next year.
I'm looking forward to that. I'll actually be doing that from London next week. I'll be in London next week for our first in-person meetup. We'll also have to start planning one of those in Israel. But yeah, 23rd, we're going to be continuing the conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun. Dig a little bit deeper on some of the areas that we touched on today. Looking forward to that. So you can definitely check that out next week. Gentlemen, have a good one. I do not know to say Happy Purim in Hebrew. You can teach us. Is there anything you say for that or no?
Oh, we'll pull him some out.
No. Yeah.
Don't make up something.
You can tell me I like Chinese food. And
the biggest tradition is to get drunk until you don't recognize yourself.
Yeah.
It's actually a mitzvah, if you know what it is.
Okay. Like, I remember about 2 Purims from the age of 17. I'm very ashamed of those 2. Remembering them is like.
Okay. All right, I get it. You really need to export this holiday more. With that being said,
we
have You're getting there. That's good. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.